Oxygen First Breath. Is it going to be a win or a bin? Just have a quick read through on Steam for you. This is the free version of Oxygen, which will actually be the main game, by the way. This is only a demo. Featuring the first 50 game days. Build your city around the Oxygen Center and ensure your people's survival in a post-apocalyptic future threatened by crack explosions, deadly winds, droughts, and frosts. Lead your people and keep the Oxygen Center running. Now, this is only the demo, and the main game itself, just called Oxygen, isn't actually with a release date at the moment, so we don't know when it's going to come out. This will be out, the demo, on the 7th of October. I've had this game for a little bit longer. The developer kindly provided me with a key, but they have been strict in saying you are not to release the video until the day of the demo release, which is the 7th. So hopefully a bit of super brief backstory here. Slightly different take on an apocalyptic scenario. No zombies, no nuclear weapons, but it's actually very much natural. In the Earth, of course, there are lots of gases. We have volcanoes, but imagine if the gases come up to the surface and it turns out they're toxic. Loads of these gases erupt at the same time, basically destroying most of humanity and life as we know it. And you are a rabble of survivors, just picking up in a usual survivor game. You start with some basic resources, you have to produce resources and fight against various challenges to keep the population expanding and not dying, basically, or leaving. That's the crux of it, just like any city builder survival game. First thing that I really like about this game, and it just humoured me slightly but worth mentioning, is I played the tutorial because I wanted to learn how to play it, and the lady narrator didn't think anything of it at first, but she seemed to become more and more breathless as the tutorial went on. Just have a listen to it in a moment. I'll turn up the volume for you, but I don't know if that's supposed to be ironic because of the natural gases thing and the oxygen thing. I don't know, but it just tickled me a bit. But I don't know if she was just a really terrible, elderly, genuinely unwell actor, or she is supposed to be sounding slightly wheezy.
Perfect. Here we can see total energy consumption of the Oxygen Center and also our constructors list. All right. Our constructors are always ready and will start working as soon as you plan a construction.
So you learn from the tutorial and playing the main game that you have a central hub that creates oxygen. The machine that creates oxygen is powered by coal and some of the power that you can get from these erupting gas areas, which pop up every now and again in the game, and you either have to plug them with a machine which can create energy that goes into the oxygen machine, or they explode and can take buildings down with it. With the explosion, although the radius of the explosion tends to be so minimal, you don't worry about it too much. That could perhaps be something to discuss. So all of your people, all of your citizens will be wearing these basic hazmat suits almost, and they carry oxygen packs around with them because they can't breathe the normal air. So they go into a workplace, and you can decide whether or not to put oxygen on in the workplace. If that's the case, the energy consumption goes up because, of course, your oxygen generator is doing much more work. If you don't choose to do that and use less energy to create the oxygen, then the workers have to go home where there is guaranteed oxygen, which is still being powered by the oxygen generator. But of course, by going home, you lose the ability to build things as quickly. You lose productivity. It's all about trying to balance things, making sure that you are obtaining enough coal from some of the natural resources that you find, and also lots of abandoned things in the game. There's abandoned trains, cars, buildings, aircraft, and each of those things has resources you can take: scrap, metals, coal, canned foods, all sorts of different things that you can scavenge with roles of your population, actually called scavengers, assigned to the jobs to get all of this stuff off the map. Plenty of resources to go around. It's set in this post-apocalyptic world, as I say, so there's loads of stuff to get your hands on to build buildings and keep your population happy. Now, I think it is actually a really nice idea for a game. I've not come across anything that uses the use of toxic gases within the earth for any game. Maybe there are some, but I've not come across them. So yeah, this is a decent idea. Loads and loads of different buildings for you to build. So a few different types of housing. You've got medical facilities, decorative areas to make things look a bit nicer and please your population. You've got signal towers, which I'll come into in a minute, radars, something else to cover as well. You've got educational areas, you've got temples, you've got tailors to build these suits, and you can have proper hazmat suits and cheaper ones, but one lasts longer than the other, but that's just all to do with tech trees and stuff. The tech trees themselves, I think, is pretty good. You've got lots and lots of different things to unlock via a research center, just like any game like this. One thing that I don't particularly like so much about the tech tree is there's a random area, so you can spend 50 research points to get 3 random technologies that you can unlock with more research points. I'd rather just have a flat tech tree. I don't want to be pressing this, effectively rolling the dice to be able to have a certain unlocked feature. But it is what it is. But overall, the tech tree is pretty good. It allows you to unlock a good array of buildings, and you really do want to unlock them as well to be able to utilize their capabilities. There's varying weather events. You've got droughts, which mean that you can't fish or produce water. You've got winds. Now, the winds are really cool because they blow all this gas around, and it means that your workers become ill. And they then need to go into hospitals, which then mean that they're not working. So you have to try and handle this stuff and prepare for it. And the oxygen generator requires more power. So with these winds, because people need more oxygen, it's going to be overtiming, and you need to make sure there's a good supply of coal and power coming through. So you've got to balance it. With the freezing, it's kind of similar. You can't fish, you can't get water. But these things are set to challenge you, and they do. People will die, people will leave if they're not happy. Equally, if you run out of a resource, they will sod off, and of course weakening your workforce, and then it's usually a downward spiral from there, and then you're fucked. That's the way these games go. They are brutal. The UI is really good. I think everything's laid out really well, easy to get to grips with. Nothing's hidden, nothing's complicated, nothing's too wordy. I just didn't struggle at all. I don't even think I would have needed the tutorial because I played quite a few games of these types. But no, it's really good. They've done well. The challenge gets harder and harder. At the beginning, it's just you're just pottering around and you're thinking, this is really easy. I'm just building buildings and people quite happy and enjoying life. But then you get hit by this first wave of winds, and they last a day or two, and you get over it. And then the next lot of bad weather or event, and it turns out that they last for maybe 2 or 3 days, a bit longer than the last one, and you just find yourself in a sort of longer situation where you have to deal with the more adverse conditions. But it becomes so much harder. Nearly lost a couple of times, I think, but they catch you off guard. I do really like the way it eventually encourages you to build what they call a signal tower, and that allows you to reach out to a wider world and find where there might be other cities or other people that might be doing the same thing as you, and then you can find what resources they have and communicate with the people and bring those people back to your base if you choose to, or leave half of them, whatever you want. You take the resources, take the people. Obviously, the more people you have, the more consuming they're going to be of your resources for housing, food, and everything. However, they are workers, so it's a balance because you probably will want workers, but you might not have capacity for them in other ways. So you've got to really think about it. The other one is radar, similar thing, but with materials. You see what materials might be lying around the world. You can go and get them and bring them back, but that's fairly self-explanatory. You get a submarine that visits you every so often, and they come up, they surface, you see the submarine visually come up, and you can get some workers from there just to help you along, maybe 3 or 4 at a time or something like that. Things that I'm not so sure about with this, there are no roads. The whole thing's just a bit of a blank canvas. Yes, you can build the buildings, but you're placing them on deserts effectively. I can maybe understand the fact there are no roads there at the beginning, but I would like to be able to build roads, at least for people to use and walk around, would be much better. The look of it overall isn't particularly awful, but it looks a little bit basic. Some elements of it, some of the ruined things you can explore, almost look mobile phone graphics and they just don't look great. The buildings that you build look okay, but it just looks a bit basic, I think. And I'm playing on Ultra 1080p. It just doesn't look great. It looks a bit cobbled together, I think, might be a good way of putting it. After workers get ill, they can return to work, but they never return to the same place where you left them. So you have to then reassign them, and sometimes you can't remember where they've been taken from, or you don't even know where they've been taken from. Nothing comes up to show that. So it would be nice if they do get taken ill, they don't do their normal job that you've assigned them to. When they're better again, I'd like them to go back to where they were would make sense. Another bad point is it just feels like it lacks a little bit of soul. I, I quite like the game, but it's just something about it. Like, I think good games have heart and soul and character. And although this is a good game with some really good ideas and lots right about it, which I've covered, it just seems to lack a little something that's making me fall in love with it. And perhaps it will come. Everything I've said here, this is a demo. There's only a finite amount we can tell at this point. I think they're onto something good, and I'm not going to criticize it. I'm not going to go over the top with my praise because, of course, everything can change with the full release of the game, with patching and feedback. But for me at the moment, it's just not making me really want to rave about it as far as maybe some other games. But this is very, very early days. Take people's feedback on board, and I'm sure you'll end up with a great game here, guys.